Welcome to topic 3, folks. So, we're going to talk about managing performance. So, managing performance. There's many different ways to do it, and you guys might have already learned a little bit about managing performance. If you're not a supervisor or a manager now, you are likely to become one in the future or have people answer to you or report to you. So, managing how well they do their job is going to fall to you at some point. So, getting to that point is where we want to go. All right, so section 3.3, investing in people. They are your most important asset. Your company is nothing without your employees, right? So, buildings are nice, patents are nice, but it's the people that actually make your company valuable, right? Right now, Elon Musk is buying Twitter. The people there have gotten Twitter to where it is today, right? By making sure those features are there that people enjoy, and so on and so forth. But I read that he's very interested in finding out how many fake accounts there are out there. So he wants to do his own survey to figure out how many there are. What's he going to find? I don't know. I imagine he's going to find quite a few, but how can you tell if it's a fake account or not? I have a Twitter account, but I don't use it. I have an Instagram account. I don't use it. I look on there every so often. Instagram won't let you see anything unless you have an account. So, yeah, I have an account. And I've had my account hacked somehow. It was a completely unique password that only was for that. So, yeah, it's a wonderful how technology is. So, when we look at businesses, like I said, they're based on the people. But one thing we want to do is cross-train our people. They need to be able to do more than just one function. That could be because they are taking over someone who's out sick, or maybe someone who quits or moved on to a different company. There's a lot of reasons that you might need somebody who's trained in other areas. It makes them more valuable because you can rely on them to perform another function. And if you are the employee, you probably should look into getting trained in other areas. It can change the monotony. You go to work, you do the same thing every day, and you go home. You go back the next day, you're doing the same thing. It gets old after a while. So if you can change that by learning a new skill at your company, then it's probably worth it, because that means now there might be two things you could do when you walk in the door. Your boss might say, hey, you're not doing this, you're doing that other thing you got trained to do. So, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to switch it over. But yeah, we can look at different things. Cross-training is great. Usually we want to enlarge their job so they can do more. They're not limited to some specific aspect. We have the confidence in them to do more. We can empower them to make certain decisions. So, for example, Walmart, you empower somebody to change prices within a certain range to, clear out some inventory. It's not quite clearance, but because it's a penny less than what it normally is, people might buy it because it's $9.99 versus $10. That little thing is like a mental trigger for some people. It's less than $10. That's why you often see $19.99. It's less than $20. For whatever reason, that psychology is there where $20 people don't want to spend, but if it's $19.99, they're willing to spend it. It's 1 penny. But if you empower people, you need to hold them accountable for what they're doing. If they make a bad decision, you need to hold them accountable. It's a good way to train people in what they should have done. But if you've empowered that person, you take some responsibility for their decision because you empowered them. But yeah, you can definitely help your people grow if you do these things. And of course, you as a manager, you want to get some cross experience. So if you are an accountant, you're the manager for the accounting department, you need to get some experience talking to marketing, supply chain, finance, all the other departments. That way you can talk to them in their language, essentially. You know, it makes it a lot easier to communicate if you're talking in that department's language. So in supply chain, we might be talking about lead times, maybe talking payment terms and stuff like that. And if we're not being talked to in that language, we have to consciously think about, how do I say this differently so this non-supply chain person can understand? So that slows down the conversation. Sometimes things get lost in that translation. I mean, think about it. A foreign language to English or English to a foreign language, things get lost in the translation. For example, Chinese or Mandarin. There's no plurals. There isn't. But we use plurals quite a bit in English. So just little things can make a big difference. So yeah, getting that experience. And then of course the teams, if you have a cross-functional team, bring in people from various departments to be on this team. So that way they can make things smoother, because let's say supply chain had a person on the team, so supply chain will be more willing to adopt whatever that team came up with. Same thing for accounting, same thing for marketing. And some departments, if they don't have a say right from the beginning, they're going to absolutely reject whatever the team came up with because they weren't consulted. And some managers that are that way, and it's unfortunate, but it can smooth some ruffled feathers if you just in the beginning brought on somebody from that area. I'm not saying that's going to be a perfect fix, but whoever they send you should have, let's say, the authority or the ability to make decisions that could affect their home department. All right, so that covers 3.3. Let's go on to 3.4 here. We're going to talk about empowerment. And this is empowerment at the job, not any of those other areas. So a lot of companies are realizing that they can empower their people to do things, but they need to coach them. Need to let their people know that, or to give them that additional training. So the leaders need to be coaches as well. I mean, you can see from this graphic here, leaders or coaches are one of the pillars. You need to set some goals, and there has to be that accountability in case things go wrong or right. And if it goes right, recognize them for it. No one ever started something was perfect at it from the beginning. I mean, it just doesn't happen. They were probably okay at the beginning, maybe not confident in what they were doing, but as they progress, they gain that confidence to get to where they are today. So, some goals. You have goal setting. You can use SMART goals. So you have the strategic. Wow, I'm drawing a blank. I just had this and I didn't write it down because I figured I'd remember it. Wow. Well, SMART goals. Our text talks about them. But there's another one, too, that our text does talk about. It's the BHAG. The bold, hairy, ambitious goal. They might call it big, hairy, ambitious goal. I call it bold. Because it's one of those things, you can call it like a stretch goal. But you're stretching quite a ways to get this. This is like, if you're really good, you can get to this. And it's just one of those things that help people strive for that level of accomplishment. Doesn't mean they're going to get there, Even if they get halfway and fail, there's still that progress, right? So maybe the next time they'll get it. Maybe it won't be a BHAG. It will be just their regular goal because they can achieve it now. And there will be a different goal to be the BHAG. So definitely take a look at your goals. All right. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about here. 3.5, we're going to talk about some metrics or measurement systems. One thing that we always come across is if you can't or hear the phrase, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's one of the things that's said in business all the time, and it's I would say it's wrong. Because you want to measure the right things. So what gets measured gets done is a very true statement. People are going to work to accomplish the goals. And once they accomplish the goals, that's about as far as they'll go. They won't go that extra mile in most cases. And if you've ever done any type of woodworking, you're probably told, measure twice, cut once. I know I got told that as a kid, especially when my dad and I were finishing a basement. Instead of concrete walls in a basement, we put up all the 2x4s and the drywall and the insulation. We did all that. So measure twice, cut once. But why are we measuring twice? Why can't we get it right on the first time? Well, could be an error. So with metrics, we want to measure the important stuff. We don't want to measure every single thing that we could possibly measure because people won't focus on the important stuff. They'll focus on getting all those little things because there might be so many of them. Overall, let's say supply chain, you're focused about on-time delivery. On-time delivery. It gets to the customer when the customer was expecting it or when it was promised. Do you really care that the truck that came to get it left 10 minutes late? Doesn't mean anything, right? 10 minutes is nothing. If they came a day late, it doesn't matter as long as it gets to the customer on time. See? That kind of thinking, it makes a difference. Because yes, you can measure when the truck arrives and when the truck leaves, let's say the dock. But that doesn't matter. As long as that truck can get to the customer on time and the customer's happy, we're good. So looking at different goals. So we want to make sure we're making progress towards the goals. So we don't want to measure everything. Behavior change. Most people will only work to accomplish the goals. They won't work to exceed the goals. So if you set a goal of what's a good one to say? Everybody has to produce or has to unload a truck within 2 hours of it arriving. That could be a supply chain goal. So let's say there's a truck that came in, there's only one pallet on the truck. They have 2 hours to get that thing off the truck. Why should they be in a hurry? There's no reason for them to be in a hurry, right? Because they have 2 hours to get that one pallet off that truck. It makes no sense to have something like that. Now, if it was a full truckload, 2 hours might be getting pretty close to that. So you want to make sure that your goal is going to encourage the appropriate behavior. Because when there's three key things to getting results. You have to have the understanding of why the goal is there, the behavior that supports that goal, and then you need to have the execution. You have to execute it. And then you'll have winning results, as our text will say. So you got to look at it from that point of view. So definitely look at it because we want to be making progress towards the goals. For me, I've always set goals for when I was in the industry that were just outside of what could be achieved. That way everybody's trying to reach them, But it's not like it's crazy outside their range. It could be achieved. It's just chances are they wouldn't. And I still congratulated them even though they missed the goal because I knew they weren't going to make the goal. But they made every effort to try to reach that goal because it was a metric they had to make. So, when they got there, I got them pizza for the day. Little thing like that. Pizza and drinks. Of course, soda and water. Not want to give them beer for lunch. And that wouldn't be a good idea. But it might be entertaining, but it wouldn't be a good idea. So, how do you want to set goals? And how do you want to set goals for your people? These are the metrics that these goals will turn into metrics on how your people will be measured. So, let's see here. Yeah, understanding behavior, execution equals results. So yeah, we're good there. So balanced scorecard. You guys may have seen this, may have done it in your management classes, but you're looking at the whole organization with a balanced scorecard. So we're usually looking at these 4 perspectives of financial, innovation and learning, internal business, and customer perspective. So our strategic goals are what are going to filter down to what are we measuring, our metrics, and our goal for that metrics. We should be able to take every single metric and follow it up to the strategic goal. We should be able to do that. So on-time delivery. It could be a strategic goal that we want to improve customer happiness by having on-time delivery. We want to improve customer happiness. Of course, that's not a great strategic goal, but on-time delivery keeps a customer happy, right? If it's late, customer's not going to be happy. If it's too early, customer's probably not going to be happy. So we have to look at it from both sides. All right. So it links what you're doing to your strategic goals, why you're doing certain things, and it can move your company in different directions based on what the goals are. So when you're looking at it, if you want to look at, under the financial perspective, we have share value. If your company wants to increase the share value because you want to put the company on the market to be purchased, well, having a higher share value would mean that your company is worth more, right? So that would be one way to make your shareholders happy, plus everybody that owns stock inside the company. So that could be one way to look at it. Let's see, growth. If you grow enough, you can maybe have another facility, have enough money to hire others because you're bringing in more revenue. All these different kind of things. So, yeah, that's what a balanced scorecard is, one tool to do that. All right, so next we'll move on to benchmarking. Now, you may have benchmarked yourself or you may have not. But we do this quite often in business. We look at another company or we set our own benchmarks and we try to beat those benchmarks. Sometimes they're ambitious, but it makes us work hard to try to achieve those. So we have the competitive benchmarks, the non-competitives, and then, of course, our internal benchmarks. But if you think about it, benchmarking, you're never going to be number one, right? Because you're comparing yourself to the next level. So if you're a mom and pop, you're not comparing yourself to Walmart, right? You're probably comparing yourself to, let's say, a larger mom and pop store. That kind of thing. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So we're making that comparison, or we're just making our own numbers and saying, okay, well, let's see where we're at. Let's benchmark, and then we'll try to improve on that. So the process, we have to define a goal. What are we trying to accomplish? And then we identify the best in class practice. You know, is something our competitor is doing? Is it something that's being encouraged in the industry? Or is it just something that we're trying to do? So it's all different ways of looking at that. And then we devise a strategy to accomplish that, to meet and exceed that benchmark. So, but with benchmarking, of course, there's things we want to avoid, right? So that's the pitfalls. So looking into the past, looking at, where we've been, because then we might get discouraged because we might have made some backwards progress. And we might look back and say, hey, well, we were, and my keyboard's running out of battery. All right. So we might look at our past and figure out that we were doing better before we changed some process. Does that mean we need to go backwards? No. It might mean that we need to keep making progress and do another evaluation later. Sometimes we want to take a look at what's out there and if we don't do that, we might have some ignorance because we're not looking out there and seeing everything. So there might be something we should be doing, but we don't know about it. So we're ignorant. It's not a bad thing. We just don't know. But when we do know, what are the actions we're taking to resolve whatever that is? And then finally, like I said earlier, we're always in second place. We're comparing ourselves to someone else and trying to beat that other who we're measuring against. If we're measuring ourselves and we finally get to the top, let's say Walmart versus Amazon. Walmart's comparing themselves to Amazon because of logistics, let's say. Well, you're trying to compare to somebody else that you may never catch. And once you let's say Walmart does succeed and pass Amazon, what does Walmart do then? Who do they compare themselves to? You have to make your own benchmarks once you get up that high. So some things to consider. Those are pitfalls of benchmarking. Some people rely too heavily on benchmarking, and therefore they don't consider the capabilities of their own company. They might not have the capability of meeting a benchmark yet. So they need to maybe think of a different benchmark until they can go for that other one. So yeah. Productivity. If we have more outputs than input, it's usually considered more productive. So that might be we're getting more efficient. We're doing more in less time. So we're considered more productive. So it's productivity is hard to recognize sometimes. So you want to be careful when you do that. When it does pop up, though, you want to be careful because it's a red flag if, let's say, productivity out of the blue just spiked. Maybe there's something going on that people are doing, let's say, cutting corners or skipping a step that's essential because they need to get their productivity up. So you have to be careful. Maybe productivity measurement is not the way you should go. But if you identify something, you have to go and look. You have to go and look and find out what happened. Analyze what happened. You can't sit in some room and just look at a sheet of paper or some report on a computer screen and expect to understand it. Go take a look if you're able to. Now, it might be in another country, another location, so it might be difficult. But if you have the ability, go and look at the situation. So, and then take action. Based on your analysis, you probably came up with a game plan. So take action. If it's bad productivity, hopefully things got turned around. If it was good productivity, you verified that it is good, or you've corrected some bad behavior. It could be various other things too, but those are probably the major ones. All right, total cost. So we have the total cost of ownership, and this is something you guys probably have never done. Well, we have this formula right here. Total cost of ownership equals the acquisition cost, the purchase price, plus the net present value of all the ownership cost plus disposal. So think about it. If we're going to do a total cost of ownership on a car, the car is worth $10,000, just to make it a round, easy number. Well, what are the ownership costs in today's dollars? Well, let's say you're going to do an oil change 3 times a year, and each oil change costs, let's say, $100, just to make things easy. So $300 a year in oil changes. Forgot about fuel, insurance, general maintenance. Other than that, or maybe some corrective maintenance. How long do you plan to keep the vehicle? Are you planning to keep that for 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, until it runs into the ground? All these different things. So that's why it's the sum. That's why you see that funny looking E, the sigma. So the net present value of the total of ownership costs plus disposal cost. Now, you bought the car for $10,000. When you sell the car back or trade it in, you probably get something for it. Let's say $1,000. So we'll actually have a minus $1,000 because you're not paying to get rid of the vehicle. If you had to pay, let's say, a junkyard to take your vehicle, then they would still be that positive, the plus there, because you had to pay. So you see how most of the time people don't think of this. They think of the acquisition cost. What does it cost for me to buy? They don't generally think, let's say, on a vehicle, how much is this vehicle going to cost me in maintenance? How much is it going to cost for fuel? How much is it going to cost for repairs? What about the insurance change? If it's an extra $20 a month in insurance, well, we have to think of that. What about property taxes? Every state seems to charge a property tax on a vehicle. All these things are generally not factored in when you buy a vehicle. People generally don't think of them. If you do, great job. If you didn't, well, think about this. Maybe next time when you buy a vehicle, you'll consider it. So some things are more difficult to factor in. So real easy to factor in is purchase price. We have the acquisition cost. What about if you need to have it transported? Or you need to pay taxes? That's the duties, etc. there. Or what if you need to do some type of inspection, or you need to maybe store it somewhere? What if there's some defective parts to it? All this other stuff. Is it, when you're doing this, do you associate it with the vehicle or do you associate it with something else? Like if the vehicle's damaged in an accident and they change the oil when they're doing the repair, well, is that billed towards the insurance, or are they going to bill you for that? Different ways to look at things. All that stuff. And actually, that's the end of what I wanted to talk about. Of course, you have your written homework to do. Let's see. I'm trying to remember which one. I think it was number 3 here I was asking you guys to do. Number 3, I believe, is what it was. So take a look and see what you guys come up with for number 3 there. As I've mentioned in the other ones, if you guys have any questions, shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions and hopefully get an email back to you as soon as I can. That way you guys can move forward with the knowledge and do great. Remember, try those quick checks once without looking back at the material and see how you do. And then the second time you take it, go back and look at the material. There should be no reason why you don't get 5 out of 5 on those, because the answers are in the material if you scroll up. So and those quick checks are a great resource for trying to study. But once we get closer to the exam, I'll give you guys some probably a separate video on some pointers on the exam. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, send me an email. I will get back to you as soon as I can, or we'll set up a time to meet. Office hours, if you want, use the link on the landing page of the course, or there's a link at the top of the syllabus, or if I send you an email through my Mix account, you'll see the link below my signature line. So yeah, I look forward to seeing some great work from you guys, high scores, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one. All right, take it easy. Bye.